it's actually, the building is just under a year old, so everything is just under a year old there.
Oh.
Yeah.
And we are just going to go from our little pre-live chat into being live here at the What's On It Elephant and Castle Facebook page. We are now live. Joining us is Paul Monaghan, who can introduce himself. He's a lovely man who I've known for a year now. I'm so grateful that he can be joining us here today. And also Michelle, the other third of Retribe. Paul, so glad that you could join us today. Really excited that you're here. While I do the little links and make sure everything's working, can you kind of tell people here at the community who you are and what you do?
Hi guys, as Nick said, my name is Paul Monaghan, and I'm really pleased and proud to be here. I am, and I have been, well, I'm Irish from Dublin, but I've been living in the UK in London since 1991. And I'm primarily an actor stroke teacher, but my first profession is actor. I came over here, as I said, to London in 1991, initially for a 6-month period on a contract in the West End. And I never left because the work is here. And I've been blessed until COVID came up with working almost continuously for the last, I guess, nearly 30 years.
Amazing. And I'm just finishing the last few links. Here we go. Okay, we're all good. So Paul, thanks for that introduction of yourself. Can you, growing up where you grew up and figuring out what you kind of wanted to do as a child, I'm really interested to know how professional actors get the bug. When does it first happen in your life when you're like, oh, do you know what? I'm gonna perform for people. When did that happen for you? I imagine at an early age, or
yeah, a lot of people say it's funny because I was looking at a group recently, and one of the questions on the group was, when you were a child, what did you wish to become? Some kids would be like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a doctor, etc. I always wanted to be either a singer or an actor, always. And the bug, I think, because my first pro gig, really, I think it was about eight or nine, because I started off singing as a boy soprano. And I just loved singing, and then anything theatrical I loved. But singing was the first thing I started with. And one of my first gigs when I was 9 was I sang for the Pope in Rome as part of my church choir, or not my church, my school choir. And it was a thing called a Pueri Cantores Congress, where all these choirs came from all over the world. And I got to lead at 9 years old, which I didn't realize what a big thing it was at the time, but now when I look back, it is, with the Vienna Boys Choir, except I was the soloist. So here was this little Irish boy from Dublin leading the Vienna Boys Choir. Singing the Ave Verum. And it was crazy. And I don't know, that is it. Once I started singing, and you get that kind of, I got that feel in front of an audience, and that buzz, that was it. That was what I wanted to do. And I went to, I started singing lessons when I was obviously very young. And then when my voice broke and I was 14, 15, I had to leave it rest. I couldn't sing for about 3 years. Under instruction, because the muscle develops differently. And that was hell. I have to say, hell. To keep my mouth shut for 3 years was a nightmare. And then when I was 18, I started back studying again, but then I went into theatre studies as well. And that was it, really. So the book was very early, as I say. It was like 7, 8 years old. I had the book. And funnily enough, in my family, it's a big Irish family, bar my nephew. I am the only one who's, any kind of musicality or theatricality. No one else in the family, which is quite rare, except, as I say, my nephew.
I want to just ask you, obviously getting the bug really early on is quite special, because you can run with it and you can really make it your life and your career from early on. Rather than going later into life and coming into it, which can often be much harder. And doing something that's your passion all of the time as your career is a phenomenal experience. But is there any part of acting or singing that you really, really enjoy more than the rest? Any kind of parts, or it's all theatre, I think, that you do? Is that assumption correct?
Yeah, mainly theatre. I think I mean, I've done some TV and I've done some adverts and I've done a couple of movies, and nothing like no major roles. But I prefer live theatre because it's a completely different atmosphere because it is live. So there's a great buzz and a great excitement. Is it going to work? How are the audience going to react? And particularly when you do a live theatre, if you're doing more than, which I do 8 shows a week in the West End, every audience is different and every audience reacts differently. So people say to me, how do you keep, doing, for example, I'm going back in August into Mary Poppins in London. And they say, how do you keep, you're doing the same thing night after night, the same role night after night, 8 shows a week for a year. How do you keep it fresh? I could say, you can say that about any job. How do you keep any job? You do say it's repetitive what you do, but the difference being with the theatre and it being an actor is no two audiences are the same. Mm-hmm. So you never know what reaction you'll get. Some nights you might get a very good reaction, other nights you might get a poor reaction. So it does keep you on your toes. And even though you are basically playing the same role, you can inhabit it differently from performance to performance. So there's always ways of keeping it, as I say, what we call fresh in the business. But it's just the spontaneity of it and the rawness, and it's so live as well that when I go to do TV or I go to do movies, we can stop and retake. So it's much more technical, and I don't really get a buzz from that.
Yeah, it keeps you in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Go on, sorry, Nick.
No, I'm interested to know when you talked about when you were being younger and when you knew that this is what you wanted to do. But I think about what you do, and I compare it to my background in sports, where we just play it to have fun when we're kids, and then all of a sudden we develop certain skills and we're like, hey, I'm good at this. I could actually start to pursue it. I was really lucky that my dad didn't push me in any direction. He just let me find my own groove. And I'm just wondering, with regards to you, and I know that there can be a lot of pressure on children to perform, especially from parents nowadays, because they want their child to excel, but the child might not have enough time to actually find the discipline or the area of performing, or whether or not it's something that they want to do themselves. And I'm just interested to know how you kind of eventually found that treading the boards in the West End was where you actually wanted to do. What was that when you finally found that was the groove that you wanted to follow?
I don't know. I think, I was, when I was growing up in the early 70s, it's not, I think to become an actor and to say you want to be an actor, for a lot of people and a lot of parents, it's a disappointment because at that time, it wasn't really regarded as a true profession, and particularly a profession where you could have a secure, security, because it isn't a secure profession. We go from job to job. Some jobs can be 6 weeks, some jobs can be a week or a day, and some jobs can be a year, like the one I'm doing at the moment. And then you can go for long periods without working. So that is, I think my parents at the time were particularly, they were aware, but they weren't worried. Well, my parents were wonderful. They just supported. They knew I had a gift. And they knew I loved it. I think my mother, I was a civil servant, believe it or not, for about a year and a half, straight out of college. And I was deeply unhappy. And it was my mother, Lord rest her, who sensed that I was unhappy. I didn't want to say anything, but she sensed I was unhappy, and she said, just go back to college, go back to the Royal Academy of Music. You're okay, we'll support you. Leave if you want. And that's all I needed. And I left and went. So the thing being from Dublin is the theatre scene is quite small. Well, I think any theatre scene compared to the West End or Broadway is very small. But every actor's dream is to appear in the West End or Broadway. Any actor will tell you that's it. And that was always my goal once I started off. And once I'd kind of exhausted what I thought I could achieve in Dublin at the time, the theatre scene in Dublin now is quite, is much bigger than it was in the 80s. The logical step for me to try and get to was to get here to London. And I was very fortunate that I was working in Dublin on a concert with a director from London. And he was working on a very big show called Follies in the West End at the time. He was assistant director on it. And he just mentioned while he was working with me in Dublin, he said, I think I can get you an audition for Les Miserables. And I thought, yeah, okay. And I thought, yeah, whatever. Yeah, he's just being nice. And he went back to London, and within a week I had a phone call from Cameron McIntosh's office, my current employer, saying, oh, we'd like to see you. Can you fly over? And that was 1990. That was November 1990. Now, I did 2 auditions. They flew me over twice, and then they offered me a 6-month contract, which was then extended to 2 years. And that was it. I never turned back. I never looked back.
So Les Mis was your debut in the West End?
It was my big one. Yeah, I was cast number 3. So I was the 3rd cast of it. And it was then, it was huge. It's huge now, but because it's had this massive revival. But it really was it was the late 80s, early 90s. It opened in 87 and I joined it in 91. And we played the Palace Theatre in London. That's where it originally opened, which is where Harry Potter is playing now, which is a huge, huge theatre. And it was epic. The scale of it. I can remember when I went for my first audition and I went to the theatre, I had to audition in the theatre, and I walked on stage and I was just in awe of the scale, particularly the stage. It was vast compared to anything I'd seen in Ireland. And looking out at the auditorium and seeing nearly 2,000 seats of plush red, it was really overwhelming. But I knew the minute I walked on stage, I thought, I'm home. This is where I want to be, And then I was really fortunate that I got it. And as I say, initially it was a 6-month contract, and then it was extended and extended. And then at the end of that, through the same company, through Cameron McIntosh, I went into Phantom of the Opera. And we went out on, I did Her Majesty's initially, and then they did a huge touring version of it, which was bigger than the West End in scale. And initially we were to tour for, I think it was 1.5 years to about 6 cities around the UK and Ireland. And at that time, touring wasn't a big thing for huge shows like Phantom. It was too expensive to take them out because tours generally tend to go to each town or city for 2 weeks at a time. So financially for Phantom, the scale it was at to work, we had to do initially, we thought we were going to do 3 months, a 3-month run in Manchester, a 3-month run in Edinburgh, and then a 3-month run in Dublin. And the show then would cover itself. We ended up doing 1.5 years in Manchester, and then we ended up doing 1 year in Edinburgh. And after that, Cameron McIntosh went, that's it, we're not going anywhere else. And we only went to 2 cities. But that was phenomenal because it meant that I got to live in Manchester for 1.5 years, and then I got to live up in Edinburgh for 1 year. But it was a huge, huge scale production. You don't get that now because it's just cost prohibitive. And because it's the access to get to London is so much easier now, easier to get to London, or was before the pandemic, let's say.
When you when you're going through all of that, and even now with what you do, you were talking earlier about, doing so many hours in the week, and you have to show up. You have to show up fully every time you're on stage. When you dress rehearse, when you're rehearsing, it's showing up fully all of the time. And that's hard, and it can be really grueling. What are some of the ways that you, or your cast, or in the industry, because we talk a lot about looking after yourself, in an office environment, but in that situation, your asset is your body, it's your voice, it's your health in a very different way. What are some ways you can look after yourself while you're in that industry, while you're physically active so much?
It's very disciplined, particularly in the musical theatre side of it is very disciplined, because you have to be what they call now, and we've called for a long time, a triple threat, which means you have to be equally adept at acting, singing, and dancing. So fitness level, physical fitness level, is paramount. So much so now, because of the pandemic, and theatres have been, and we've been out of business for over a year now, and we're going, as I say, going back in July. The company are very aware of this, so they've started up company fitness classes. We start next week, and vocal classes to get us back in shape, because they obviously know with the pandemic, it's not that, I mean, normally I would do my own classes, but because everything has been closed down, there hasn't been, we've been able to do a couple of classes online, but it's not the same as in-person classes. The discipline of doing it, I know people kind of say, oh, but you only do 3 hours a night, on stage. But the amount of energy you burn up physically and mentally on stage is phenomenal within the 3 hours. And particularly on the bigger shows like Les Mis and Phantom and Mary Poppins. So physical stamina and mental health is very important as well. I think the pandemic for everybody, but particularly in our business, because we've been hit so badly by it, has affected the mental health of a lot of practitioners in our business. And purely because we are the last people to go back to work. We will be, because we cannot, I know theatres reopened in May, but they opened with social distancing, and that's fine for the smaller scale, the less expensive shows, but the really big musicals like my own, Mary Poppins, and like Les Mis and Phantom and Hamilton, it's cost prohibitive. So basically, if they were to open with social distancing, the show would not pay for itself. It would barely pay us. So it's been a really difficult decision that we cannot open until social distancing is completely lifted. And that is what we've been told from June 21st will happen. There are still a lot of protocols will be in place. It'll be a very different environment we go back to, because there'll be a lot of safety protocols, new protocols, COVID designed within the theatre. So even though social distancing, I think, it will be lifted, I think we still initially for a few months will have the audience will have to wear masks, and we will all have to be, all the actors will be vaccinated. I have been vaccinated anyway, but all the younger actors particularly, because obviously I'm a senior member in the company, but most of the company members are in their mid-20s, mid to late 20s. But they will all be vaccinated, and so it's a different. Again, it's another aspect. It's going to be a different way of performing and a different way of living. So what we now need to do is rebuild our stamina, physical stamina and mental stamina, and the company are great. If there's injuries in the company, we have physiotherapists, they have doctors that they put, they send us to. They have their own company doctors and physiotherapists in Harley Street and things like that. So anytime, I think safety and health is paramount within the company for the actors, because it's a very full-on profession. It's a very actively involved profession. So you do have to be at a peak of fitness to sustain 8 shows a week. 8 performances a week, and then you just have one day off to kind of recover. I'm careful about what I eat. I make sure I sleep well. So I think just in general, you know, just looking after yourself, but physical health is a big thing.
Well, this last year, as you were speaking, I was just trying to think about, you know, a profession that has stopped for the whole time that we've been locked down. So there's been no reopenings at all. I would believe for the theater. And I'm just wondering what it's been like. You know, I've been able to work, Michelle's been able to work, most people have been able to work at some point, whereas you guys have just been from working to zero, and now you don't go back until June 21st. I know there's some, like you say, there's like, I think Mousetrap is running, and there's some little productions that are going.
Yeah.
But you know, you personally have not worked in your chosen profession for over a year, and I'm just wanting to know what it's been like on you to you know, to be so restricted by what's happened and with this pandemic.
It's been tough. It's been very tough. I think the other thing to remember too is, as I said earlier, in my profession, there tends not to be any guarantee of work. So there are periods in an actor's working career where they can be out of work for 3-6 months, sometimes. Fortunately, that's not happened to me in like nearly 30 years. I seem to have jumped from one job to the next, from one show to the other. It's been very frustrating, I have to say, really frustrating not to be able to. And it's been worrying because whereas, as you said, other professions have been able to reopen under certain guidelines, you know, the be all and end all is we cannot open until either everybody's vaccinated or social distancing. They're the two things are completely lifted. We just can't open. So it's been very frustrating because there have been moments where we thought we would go, you know, we would come back, and there's been massive disappointments because of the constant 2 or 3 lockdowns. Every time we come to the end of a lockdown, hope is built, and then it's completely, you know, it's where our hope is knocked down again. And to be honest, you know, they're saying June 21st, and I'm still got my fingers crossed, but until I'm actually standing on a stage, I won't believe it, you know. I've been fortunate enough in that when the schools have gone back and the colleges, because I teach, what I perform, I teach as well. So I've been able to keep my hand in the profession as such, and I love teaching. I love teaching burgeoning talent, and you know, seeing talent come up. That's where I'm at the moment. I'm in college, just between classes, and that's good. So I've been able to keep my thumb in the pie, basically. But I know from all, I'm just dying to see all my friends as well. That's the other thing, company, because company is not just when you do a theatrical performance, you bond very, very quickly with your team members, with your cast, and you get to know each other very intimately because of the nature of the work. So it becomes like a big family, and particularly something on Mary Poppins, which is very, very, the show itself is very uplifting and very family driven. It is, I miss all the kids, I miss the olders, you know, I just miss their company. Yeah, I miss live audiences, and I just miss being, you know, not being able to do, I feel so restricted not being able to do what I can do, knowing that I can in my own room, but I can't do it in where I want to do it, you know, in the space I need to do it in. So as I say, we don't open until August 7th, but we go into rehearsals July 19th. And that first performance on August 7th, I can't wait. It's going to be electrifying, particularly the audience reaction will just be, I don't know, it's just, I'm so excited about thinking about it. The atmosphere in the building will be extraordinary, you know, to be back into a building of live theatre, particularly at the end of our show when Mary Poppins herself, she flies out over the audience with her brolly.
She
and
really
in
flies
normal
too,
times,
she's
that got a
magical.
Yeah, and in normal times that got a great reaction, but in this time, you know, because of what everybody's gone through. And I think it's not, you know, theatre, a lot of the arts is going to be, it's not just for us, it's going to be a tonic for everybody, you know, everybody, because people go to the theatre to forget and to be entertained and just to release. And they go to the cinema or any of the arts. We go, you know, we go to let our hair down and, as you say, and be, as I said, be entertained and forget the worries of the day. So it's really important for audiences as well. You know, it is a great medication after everything that the world has gone through in the last year and a half. That we can start to get back to a normality, but that we can start to go out and start to be entertained. You know, so yeah, it's exciting times. You know, so I just can't wait to get back. So.
Me too.
There's such an amazing, I mean, we're so lucky in London with the theatres that we've got. You walk into the building and it feels magical. And then you go to your seat and, you know, so there's some of the theatres are just exquisite. You know, you look up and it's just the whole thing surrounds you and it builds up before anybody even steps up on stage for an audience. And you capture that so beautifully with what you just said. So thank you. It's a really important way to connect with other people, even if you don't talk to other people. It's one of the places in London you can go and not feel lonely. You know, London can be such a lonely place. Even if you're on your own in a theatre, you feel part of it, and that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
With I would love to ask, with it being such a hard profession, I think the stat that might have changed since I read this last, but 1 in 4 actors aren't working at any one time because it's a hard profession to get into. And if there's anybody listening who's really drawn to the arts, drawn to theatre, drawn to acting, or whether it's film, TV, would you give them any kind of advice on where to go, where to look, how to pursue that career that can be notoriously quite hard?
Yeah, it's training is paramount and starting youngish. I mean, like any vocation, you know, if you're going to be a doctor, you've got to train. You know, if you're going to be a teacher, you've got to train. If you're going to be an actor, you must train. And you know, starting from where I'm teaching at the moment, I'm teaching obviously up and coming performers, and their ages are 16 to 18. And it's part of the BTEC course. So they get 2 A levels out of what we do here. But we are gearing them to move on to full-time training. And full-time training normally in drama schools is a 3-year course. So they need to be, you know, going to drama school 18 to 21. I think the thing about it is if you have the bug and if you have the passion, go with your passion. It is a great profession to be in. There are a lot of disappointments. You have to be realistic about that. As you said, 1 in 4 actors are out. Sometimes it can be what they used to say, the percentage was that 70% of your year you're out of employment if you look on a full career basis. And that can be true, but you can also be employed all your life. I mean, touch wood, I've been very lucky that there are very few periods where I've not worked. But if I just say, go with your dreams, go with your passion, if that's what you want to do, if it's in your heart. It's probably one of the very few professions where you get to work in a business that you love. That it's not a hobby, it's just something you love, it's in your blood, and you get paid to do it. You know, sometimes I do pinch myself thinking, God, yeah. But then there are other times, the times I've not worked, it's tough. And you have to be ready for a lot of rejection when it comes to auditions. But I try and instill in anybody who's coming up is just follow your dream. But you know, you're not being, particularly when you go for auditions, you, the person, are not being rejected. They're not saying, as I say to my students here, they're not saying you're not good enough. They're just saying you're not the right person for the job, because they are looking for specific types for roles. And all too often when actors go in for auditions, they take it, obviously, personally when they don't get the job, but it's not personal. Because the very fact that you get into an audition room, if you can get into the audition room, the auditioning panel have let you into the room because they know you're capable of doing the job. They just need to see if you're right. And the other thing about the audition panel is they are willing you to get the job because they want to employ you. But it's all down to type. That's, you know, what it is. But it's a very rewarding profession to be in. Because it's one of those professions where you give, you know, I'm not taking, yes, I take applause or whatever at the end, but we're giving entertainment. We're giving light relief. We're giving emotion. We're giving storytelling. And there's nothing better than to give rather than take. And I think that's the beauty of this profession.
I think that's it, isn't it? So it's about doing it because you like the profession, not because of search for fame. And it feels like, you know, with the modern day kind of Instagram, social media culture, people want to try to be famous. And they're like, okay, I'm going to be an actor because I get to be on glossy magazines and have tens of thousands of followers. And I like the way you speak, Paul, because I know for you, it's all about passion and you know, and that feeling of doing stuff live, you know, and connecting with people. And there's just no better way to do it than the theater. I love going to the theater. I can't wait to see you in Mary Poppins. So I'm looking forward to that. But I kind of want to just briefly go into the teaching side of things, because again, people go, you know, they think about famous performers and they're like, oh, you know, everyone's like, oh, they were naturally talented, they're naturally gifted, but not a lot of people know about the work that goes into, you know, vocal training and acting training and dancing. You know, it's like you say, you have to be that threefold threat, and it is a lot of work, isn't it? And now as a teacher of it, what has been your experience like seeing these 16 to 18-year-olds, especially, you know, through this last, you know, what I suppose I want to try to see is when do you see the excitement in their eyes, and how does that make you feel?
Oh, I think from day one, really, because they are, as I said, and as you said, they're here because they want to be. You know, they're here training in so many kids. And I know when I was a kid, like when I was in school, I had to learn French and I had to learn Latin. I hated it. I didn't want to, but it was the curriculum and you had to do it. So I got no enjoyment. I got no buzz. I got no life from it. The students that come to performing the arts in general is because they want to, because they have a passion for it. So you tend to, what I like to see is just the growth, you know, because they are at the very beginning of the career. And it's not just the physical, it's the mental growth as well. Because it's a tough business being able to wear your heart on your sleeve all the time and be very honest to what you're doing. You know, I mean, let's not, you know, actors don't act, but as I say to them, you're not acting, you're being. You become that person and you become in that state or in that emotion. And to be brave enough to do that, it's beautiful when you do it. There's nothing better. But to see the kid, I always say the kids here, the students, well, not kids, the students, they're a little bit like sponges. I can't give them enough at the moment, which is so rewarding because it just makes me work more, you know, and I can see all my 30 years of working with, I've worked with all the top directors, all the top writers, composers in the world. I've had Andrew Lloyd Webber write a song for me, you know, so I've been very lucky in the stuff I've done. But everything I've learned, I'm passing on to them. So the beauty is, the practical side of it is it's firsthand experience. And it's watching them develop, and they have a passion. And that's the beauty of this training is passion comes first with the training. It's tough. It's very tough. And they do have to start at an early age because it's just like an athlete. It's a very physical sport, you know, very like a sport. It's very physical theater or acting. And you've got to get the body young, particularly for dancing. You've got to, so you can get the agility and the flexibility in the body. You have to start young. There's no point starting if you want to be a West End dancer. You don't start in your late 20s because your body is not developed wrong. There's
Trying to say I can't be a West End dancer at 50? Am I
I
done?
don't know. I haven't seen your twinkle toes yet. But no, I think, and that's what I, you know, it's just a joy to teach, because it's what they want to learn, you know. So it's I'm not forcing anything down their throat that they don't want to do, which is lovely.
I love how you translate the passion for what you do into your teaching. There's something so simultaneous about that, but that I think so many people miss. And not only do you experience what they are about to experience, you can give them all of the value and the wisdom that you've built up at the start of their career. And I think that's really, I did drama in college, and as a student of what you're teaching, I can only just imagine them sitting in their class and gaining that kind of that knowledge and that from you and that energy from you. I'm also one of these people that have sat in a West End theatre and cried just because I've just enjoyed what's on stage so much, and it's, you know, it's so very special. And just part of me wants to say thank you for being part of that, and thank you for bringing that. It's just, and it does take so much. And you're right, people don't understand what goes into that performance, whether you're talking about, you know, an icon that you follow, a singer that does a concert, or somebody on the West End stage, or somebody that's in a film. The amount of work that goes into one moment of performance is huge. You know, it's more than tenfold, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that people don't seem to realize is that in training in this profession, the students, the young students, are developing so many life skills, within it, you know. And there's also the psychology, there's everything thrown into it, you know. So it's not a matter of just getting up on a stage and singing and dancing, you know. But the discipline, and as you say, the passion is, you know, you've got to be passionate about it, to stick with it as well, because it's a tough profession. You know, there are, for every job, there's 100 actors for every job who can do it. So it's competitive as well. Thankfully, even when it's competitive, it's not, if I can say it, it's not such as it used to be, bitchy. It's not as that anymore. It's a little bit more compassionate now. And I think now, particularly because of what we've gone through with the pandemic, there's a much greater awareness now of particularly mental health within it, because we've been hit so badly with it. You know, to be denied basically what a lot of us feel is a kind of a birthright, you know. So it's not just a job, it's a way of life for us. And to not be able to live your life, which we haven't been able to do for a year and a half, has been really tough, really tough. And it's not just that I've not been able to, it's also to see that all my fellows, none of us have been able to do it, you know. So it's not the situation where, oh, I'm not working, I'm glad you're working. It's, we're all in the same boat together at the moment. It's very unique. Not even in World War II did the theatres close down. In fact, the last time the theatres were closed down for an extended period, which was a longer period than this, was the mid-1600s, in the Jacobean times, when James I closed all the theatres on religious grounds, and they closed for 18 years. But that's the last time that anything over a year that the theatres have been shut down, you know. And the other thing is that the theatre profession is the lifeblood of the West End. It's not just, there are so many other businesses in the West End that rely, you know, the hospitality business particularly, the restaurants, the bars, the memorabilia, you know, there's so much, the hotels, tourism. A lot of it relies on, you know, because we, particularly in the summer period in the West End, we rely on tourism an awful lot. Europeans, Americans, Japanese, from all over come in. And the other thing about my profession is that it's taken me everywhere, all over the world. You know, I've been, before I did Mary Poppins, I did an extended run of Cats, the musical. and I finished my run in that and played in when we rewrote it. But before that, I went on what we thought was just a UK tour, but we ended up going to Athens, to Milan, to Istanbul, to Monaco, to Oslo, to Rome, where else, to Thessaloniki. Like for 10 months, I was touring all over Europe and the Middle East, Tel Aviv. You know, what other business can you get that, where you go and you get paid for doing what you love, and then you get to experience all these beautiful places, so.
I want to make a joke about cats traveling to different countries, but I'm not gonna. Paul, we've actually got to know each other because you took part in or you have taken part in a lot of our Thursday workshops almost from the beginning of this. And I just kind of, you talk about mental well-being and looking after yourself. I just want to kind of ask about your experience about, us kind of in this little tribe settings of us being able to deal with the certain topics around isolation and building boundaries and self-care and your participation with us and how we've kind of grown to become friends.
It has been particularly during during this period of time. I think the one word that comes to mind is reassuring, and it's kept me alive, I have to say, because it's made me focus on particularly my mental health and my well-being. It's made me very aware of certain issues within my life that I can address that I wouldn't have addressed ordinarily. It's helped me hugely to relax and to build back my confidence, and to know I'm not alone. I think that's the beauty of with your Thursday morning meetings. I know that at the end, because I talk to you afterwards, that I always say to you afterwards, I'm buzzing now for the rest of the day. And I always do. And it's always, what I love about the meetings is it's always food for thought. So much food for thought, because we connect, and connection is really important, and listening to each other and, and discussing ideas and notions and feelings, hugely important. We don't do it enough in real life. It takes a program like yours. There are too few of them around, and they're so precious that not enough people do them. And I don't know why, to be honest, because they are life enhancing. I think that's the best way of describing it. They really are, because you never stop learning, and I never stop questioning, and I'll never stop learning. But we never stop learning from each other. We just don't choose to take the time to learn and listen to each other enough. That's what I think, and that's where your Michelle's program is so beneficial. It's really, my God, I've got so much from it. But even just like the hour we'll do on a Thursday, I'll grow so much from that hour, and I can feed on it so much and think about it. And it's such a great way of learning and developing. You never stop developing, no matter what age you are, and I love that. I love the fact that I'm questioning more now than ever. But they're good questions, a lot of positive questions. So there's a lot of positivity. I guess it's openness and positivity and strength and support. All those lovely, lovely adjectives we like to use that we very rarely use are in abundance in your program.
Thank you. It's been great to have you being a part of them. We're just wrapping up with our final minute. Michelle, do you have any closing questions or statements?
Two things. One, I'm coming with you to go and see Mary Poppins for sure.
Come as my guests, you two. Come as my guests, please.
I would love to see it. So that's definitely in the book, definitely. And Paul, thank you so much. You've got such a grounding, peaceful, gorgeous energy. And thank you for spending the time with us. I've really enjoyed hearing more about your story.
No, thank you for asking me. It's absolutely my pleasure. Absolutely.
Paul, thank you. And thank you for showing up. I think that's the thing, is that, well, that's what you've done. And that's what I would tell other people, is just to do what Paul does, which is show up. and then
It's
from
all
there,
you got to
everything can
do is
happen.
just press the button and go, you're in. I kind of understand apprehension because we get so, we confine ourselves. It's easier to confine to open up. But once you open up, you don't stop, you know, so just press that button and come in.
You're a beautiful human being. I'm glad that you're in our lives. Thank you so much, Paul,
You
for
too.
joining us. Thank
Okay.
you, Michelle. And thanks everybody at the What's On at Elephant Castle Facebook page. Don't forget this Thursday, we do have a workshop coming up. And Michelle, you can tell us what this workshop is this Thursday.
We're talking about igniting your passions, which follows on very nicely from what we've been talking about today, actually. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Beautiful.
Super. Have a lovely
Thanks,
day,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks,
Have a lovely
Paul.
day. Thank
See
you.
you.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.